why sometimes anything exists at all, Why this wholeness? What is it that's going on at the heart of this cosmic life? And here's where I think spirituality has some really important things to say. Now, Teilhard, again, Teilhard did not write as a theologian. He was a religious thinker, but he really wrote as a scientist. And what he realized is that there seems to be a fundamental law of attraction at the heart of all cosmic life. He said, no matter where I look, even in the smallest of molecules, there's this being drawn together. And that has been a question even for scientists. We can tell you what the forces are. We can't tell you why they are. And what Teilhard said is this fundamental force of attraction seems to go hand in hand with the rise of consciousness. Which led me to just revisit that wonderful statement by the medieval theologian Bonaventure, who said, "You truly exist where you love, and not merely where you live. Love is the name of the game." So what Teilhard did is he saw that, and here comes out of his discussions with physicists, he saw that energy is the core stuff of life. And he spoke of a core energy that has two directions. He said there is, on one hand, what he called tangential energy, or the energy of attraction. And we know this energy because we are constantly being drawn to something, right? To another person, to ideas, to look like this. And then he said, if it's being drawn together, there's another direction of that energy, and that's transcendence. As we are drawn together in this energy of love, we are drawn radially beyond ourselves to a new level of awareness. Now, so in his view, the energy of attraction is the energy of transcendence. And that led him to talk about love energy at the heart of all cosmic life. Now, what Teilhard realized is that we cannot get to a new understanding of God in this unfolding universe without a new philosophy, right? We know that philosophy is how we understand being itself and God as, you might say, the personal source of that being. So that led Teilhard sort of to begin to develop a new philosophy of love. He didn't complete it, but he certainly began it. And basically what he said is love energy. Why did he call it love energy? Because it's not random energy. He said it's a center-to-center attraction. That there seems to be core elements attracted to one another, as love does. Love is deeply personal. Love is unitive. As it unites, love is generative, right? And so, you don't have to be a rocket scientist, right, to know that falling in love changes your mind, right? That when you fall in love, your whole level of consciousness, your awareness changes. You see the world differently. It is wonderful to see young people fall in love, right? Nice to see older people fall in love too. People who have felt, like there's no hope or life is just, hanging on, and then they meet someone and they fall in love. I ran into someone just like last year, who got married for the first time at 83. Hey, listen, it's an AI world. Anything's about to happen, So I think it's great. I think it's wonderful, right? It's a whole new awareness of belonging. So love unites, and in that unitive, consciousness rises. We know that consciousness without love is lifeless. That's the left brain without the right brain, the unmindful self. And yet love without consciousness is selfish, right? This kind of physical emotion, that has no deeper awareness of personal unity or generativity. And by love here, we do not mean an emotion, right? Love is the good that seeks the good of another. Love is action. Love is act itself. So love goes out to another, to be with that other, to transform that other. And that's, in a sense, what we're saying what nature is at the heart of all life. It is, in a sense, unitive and generative. So Teilhard spoke of love as a cosmological force. Isn't that wonderful? Not gravity, not electromagnetism, but love as the fundamental cosmological force. Oops. Jumping ahead here. So he says he's talking about physical reality of attraction, union, emergence. So he says, the force of love energy is present from the Big Bang, though indistinguishable from molecular forces. It's like looking at, chlorophyll and, and looking at, xylem leaves or something and saying, this is love energy at work here in nature. So when love energy gets, is mindful itself without being disturbed, it produces beauty and harmony and unity. I just thought I like to include this these days. You know that if you spell evol backwards, you have love. And of course, the O for Teilhard spoke of a principle of wholeness and unity at the heart of life itself. Very close to David Bohm's idea of a quantum potential. And that for Teilhard was omega, that principle of oneness, unity, wholeness. And of course, if you take the O out and you put an I in there, it's not looking too good, right? When we, in a sense, cut ourselves off from love or collapse love into the self, into the subject, we have a world of disconnection or evil. So he says, love is the most universal, the most tremendous, the most mysterious of the cosmic forces. And that led him to say that, reality is love being. We are really love creatures. Now, because that sounds so much like Woodstock 1968, and you're expecting the Beatles to come on the scene anytime soon, that all you need is love. And so, and culturally, we so pulverize love, right? We fall in and out of love like water droplets, and yet what Teilhard is saying is love is the deepest ontos, the beingness of being itself is love. And if we could wrap ourselves around this reality that there is no being that is not being with, and we know this from our own experience, that when we are alone and we feel isolated, cut off, we feel diminished in life, sometimes thwarted, because we are meant for love. We are created intrinsically for interbeing. We are interbeing. So that we do not exist in order to possess, which is how we live today. But we exist in order to give of ourselves, for it is in giving that we become ourselves. Love unites, and in that union, our core being shines out. It is differentiated. We know this again when two people truly are in love. The beauty of their personalities shines out. They don't amalgamate, they don't, homogenize into some amorphous being. They become this beauty of two persons bound deeply by an energy of love. So what Teilhard says is being must first be a we before it can be an I. That is our most fundamental reality that is consonant with nature itself. It is a we before it is an I, and we have it backwards today. It is I before we. And as long as we continue to live in that partial consciousness of a disconnected I, the priority of which is over the we will continue to devolve, thin out, fragmentize, polarize, and perhaps annihilate ourselves if we continue on this path. So what Teilhard said is the universe in the framework of love is intrinsically relational. The whole of reality is covenanted in bonds of love. Nature has, the term beauty speaks of that harmony of love at the heart of all cosmic life. The beauty of opposites held in union by bonds of energy. So what Teilhard said is the physical structure of the universe is love, which means that the universe is covenanted not only in love, but is oriented toward more consciousness. Where there is love and higher consciousness, there's a deepening of life itself. And when we cut ourselves off from these things, we have a very, very difficult world. Which means that love does not have, any kind of end point. You don't fall in love and say, well, here's our goal, we're going to do this for 10 years and see what happens, right? Love, by its very nature, is open to future life. Love is always, when it's real love, it's on the path to deepening love. So the universe itself, you might say, covenanted in love, is open to the future. Future is our most apt description of reality, not the present alone. We are only, to live in the present is good, but future is part of this present. As quantum selves, we are always living in the realm of possibilities, right? We are always living on the cusp of the future. And every choice we make then becomes determinant of that future. And that led Teilhard to say it's not a matter of metaphysics, which is how classical philosophy would posit it. It's a matter of hyperphysics, that the whole of life is being oriented toward more being, more life, more love, more consciousness. And in our deepest selves, this is what we long for. Every single person on this earth, whether they are Jewish, Muslim, Catholic, atheist, secular, whatever, from Russia, Micronesia, New Zealand, around the globe, every single person is born out of love, exists in love, and is oriented toward the fullness of love. And when we meet one another, not, left brain to left brain, but heart to heart, we realize this deeper reality. Which led Teilhard to say the foundation of things is not so much a ground being just sustaining us, like God watching over us and making sure we're okay, but rather a power of attraction, he says, toward what lies up ahead. A power of attraction, that even when life falls apart, there is something deep within that is pulling us to get up again and to orient ourselves to something new. And therefore, he says, this is what organic life is. This is cosmic life. The whole thing is resting on the future as its sole support, because Omega, and that Omega as God, is pulling this life already into something new. And yet we know that God, who is Omega, is already within us. And that led Teilhard to ask, who will give evolution its own God? And of course, I always say, well, I'll give it a try since I'm here. And why not? Now here's Teilhard writing in the 20s and 30s. This is what he wrote then. He said, the human world of today has not grown cold, but it is ardently searching for a God proportionate to the newly discovered immensities of a universe whose aspect exceeds the present compass of our power of worship. Our God has become too small. Our worship has become too small, too limited for the cosmos we now live in and where we are feeling now the forces. He said, people are not a-religious, but against the narrowness of institutional religion. He said, people are not really atheistic. What they are against is unsatisfied theism. That's the term he used, unsatisfied theism. And therefore, he himself, the not only the prophet, but, the quester, Teilhard, the one who was ready to plow the fields of a new God, takes it right from Scripture, right from, Isaiah and the book of Revelation. I am the Alpha and the Omega. I am the beginning and the end. And what Teilhard says is that end is already in the beginning. A God who is already that wholeness and fullness of love is already in our midst. And we oftentimes are unconscious of this power of unity within us. So what Teilhard says is we need a new understanding of God, not so much of a God of the past, or a God sort of the overseer, or God like the first cause God. He said a God who is doing new things from the future, a God of infinite possibilities. And that's why we should never, never, never limit God, which means we can't limit the things of God, as if to say, oh, we could never, never think about merging or converging or starting something new, Really? I mean, take a look at our universe story. God loves new things. I think God must be going all the time, oh, God, he's probably saying, what's wrong with them? They're like stuck in their tribes, I mean, they can't get out the door, and this God is like pulling, it's like luring us, inspiring us with love, with new awareness, and we're so fearful of new things, right? We're like, oh, well, you think we should try changing the altar, Yeah, that's a really good idea. Well, what if we have a girl on the altar? What will happen? I think God must be rolling God's eyes. If there's divine eyes, really, that's what. I think divine eyes are rolling there. In the meantime, I think God is empowering us. Hey, kids, get up and do something new. Life is before us, not behind us. The more of life is what we're about. So what Teilhard posits is what Panikkar calls a cosmotheandrism. It's this interlocking Trinitarian reality of God, cosmos, and human. That we need God, God needs us, because, as Rahner says, God's fate is in and with the world. God cannot be God truly of this world unless God is part of our lives and rises up from within. So as Teilhard said, God completely other than the world and yet unable to dispense with it. He saw that this world is actually sort of necessary for God to really be God. The godness of God is in and through the world. And we have, because we are quasi-Aristotelians, we've had this notion that God could be fine without us, just happened to be that he created us and, we're the lucky recipients of divine grace. And we're like, no, God and the world are in this process together. It's like God saying, if this is a love story, God's like, I need you. I need you. And you need me. And we need one another to be cosmos. That I can participate in this world insofar as I participate and empower now the life that is self-reflective and self-conscious. So what Teilhard says, only a God who is Omega, a God drawing us from up ahead, can satisfy us. And this sometimes, I think, is our struggle. We keep trying to hold on to the past, to what was, because it's always been this way, right? It's always, religious sisters are really good about it. It's always been this way. And it wasn't always this way, sister. Guess what? So it's about love. It is about love. Love is the name of the game. And, we can write this whole universe story as a story of love. A dynamic universe, a dynamic God. This is no stay-at-home God. This is no like self-thinking God, like 3 men at a tea party who had an idea one morning. Hey, what do you think, we have a creation? Yeah, let's try that. Yeah. Okay, this is a God of love, Where there is love. Now you know this. I'm preaching to the choir here. There is self-gift. There is not only, I have to do this, it's a drawing out. It's a deep relationality. It's kenosis. It's self-emptying. Not only do I need you, I love you, and I want to be with you. It's desire. And that's what God is. God is love. Love's not something that God does. It's not like God is big being who, decides, hey, I think we should love. Yeah, it's a great idea. But love is what God is. So where there is love, there is God. Where there is this movement out toward another, for the good of another, there God is rising up. So God is love, and love is relational. And that is consistent with what science tells us about our cosmic home. In the beginning, Martin Buber wrote, is relationship. It all begins because of relationality, which means that a world of individuality that warrants against relationship is an unnatural world. That is a world that is not godly. That is a world that is not even organic. That is a world that is truly artificial. Because to be is to be in relationship. And so we see that a relational God empowers a relational universe. The left is a stained neuron, a brain cell, and the right is a NASA image of the universe. Is that not awesome? That's how truly awesome this love energy and this God of unity is at the heart of life. And so we have the language of Trinity. I know Cynthia Bourgeault, Raymond Ponikar, and others have, her law of three, which Beatrice Buteau, another wonderful theologian writer, spoke about. Ponikar says that Trinity is the ultimate triadic structure of reality. But what that means in an organic way, is that there is flow, there is receptivity, but it's not about equilibrium and balance, which is sort of how we grew up thinking. It's all got to be in equilibrium. But the beauty of the Trinity is that it lives on the edge of chaos. It's open, and that third dimension, that third person, is the asymmetric or the asymmetry of God, God's self. In other words, it breaks through this stasis of, of one being, other being, and it breaks through that into the creative newness of the breath of life we call spirit. And so Trinity means that God is constantly flowing into receptivity, and then out of that asymmetry in this breath of new life. And so there is a projection outward of agapic love, a projection forward to something new, that God is best lived in creative expression. And Teilhard saw this. He said creation can only have one object. We are not a universe. We are being created toward a universe, a one word, a unified love. And he says that can only happen by a process of personalizing synthesis. The whole thing, he says, the whole of evolution, with humans at the tip, is like one giant person in the act of formation. And in that respect, we're saying that creation is best described as the expression of love, a God who is love, who is self-expressing, self-involving, and therefore self-evolving. And again, this is difficult because we have sometimes this image of God as sort of stayed, the one constant baseline level while the rest of life is fluctuating. Not realizing that our fluctuations is because God is, advancing before us. That's the dynamic, self-communicative God. So creation is occurring. And here, I think we have to get our heads around this. We are being created. We are unfinished. We will become something new because God loves to do new things. And our reality is not solely dependent on the past. And we have to get over that thinking. We are, in a sense, imprisoned by the past. We are governed and determined by the past. And from a quantum level, that past is in our present moment. And the only thing we have now in this present moment is to make a choice for the future. So what Meister Eckhart said is God is the newest thing there is, the youngest thing there is, the youngest thing there is. Isn't that wonderful? He says God is the beginning, and if we are united to God, we become new again. If we are really living in love, and that love is God, we will be the freest, the most creative, the most daring of all people on earth. We are then to be plowing the future of evolution. Because what Teilhard realized is that evolution is not simply the universe coming to be, it is God who is coming to be. God is rising up in and through this evolutionary process as we become mindful of love at the heart of our lives, and that love becomes our life in the celebration and the glory of one who is other than us, and yet deeply immersed in our lives, seeking to make all things new. Thank you. Now we have about a half an hour, and what we could do is you can breathe a little bit quietly and maybe take a few minutes quiet to yourself. And then I would ask maybe turn to one another with, thoughts or challenges that are evoked, by a new understanding of God at the heart of evolution. And then at 11:45, we'll have a brief discussion, okay? So we'll have a few minutes of silence, and then we'll ring the bell, and then I'd ask you to turn to your neighbor or two.